Welcome to Fantasy Focus Football. I'm Michelle Steele alongside Matthew Berry, and it is week 3, and we're here to talk about some of the guys that Berry loves or hates just a little bit more than his coworkers.
Correct.
First up, we're going to drink some haterade with Larry Fitzgerald. Is your thing with Fitzgerald, is it a quarterback thing or is it a Fitzgerald thing?
It's frankly a little bit of both, and it's also a matchup thing, but specifically it's mostly a quarterback thing. Kevin Kolb and Larry Fitzgerald have played together in 10 different games. And in those 10 games, he's got two touchdowns in 10 games. You see the numbers here on your screen, Michelle, 5 receptions, 67 yards. That's for the year. I mean, that's a bad game, and that's what he's done so far this year. And then you look at the matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. For all the problems that defense had at the beginning of last year, they've really turned it around. In fact, going back to last year, over the last 7 games, they've allowed just 7 touchdown passes. That is a very legit defense, and given the issues with Kevin Kolb, again, facing his own team, do you think the Eagles know that Kevin Kolb reacts poorly to pressure? I think they do. Larry Fitzgerald is an amazing talent, and in terms of NFL wide receivers, one of the best. But for fantasy this week, given his quarterback, who he's facing, and the production he's had so far this year, I have him outside my top 20. I think he's a flex play at best.
What I really like about this hate list is that you pull no punches. It's a couple more big names on this list, including Andre Johnson, a wide receiver for the Texans, who in fact said this week he doesn't care about your fantasy team. That's how much fantasy hate he's getting right now.
Well,
he told reporters, he on the record.
And I got news for you. It's clear that he doesn't care about our fantasy teams, because all you got to do, Michelle, is look at the production that Andre Johnson has had recently, and it's not great. He had one good game in week 1, and then he did absolutely nothing against Jacksonville, a game he should have dominated in. 59, that's my number. 59 different players have more red zone targets this year than Andre Johnson. He's also a very talented NFL wide receiver, but the Texans run the most in the NFL. If you look at the scheme of what the Texans do, they run some more, and then they run. When you've got Arian Foster and Ben Tate, you can do that. You look at the Denver Broncos, they just shut down Julio Jones, and the Texans don't have a Roddy White to take some pressure off of that. So considering how little the Texans pass both in the regular season, in their actual games, and then in the red zone, they pass even less in the red zone, lowest in the NFL, and given Johnson's production so far, the matchup, he's another guy that I have outside my top 10. Outside my top 20, actually.
Outside your top 20.
Outside of my top 20 at wide receiver.
Okay. You had Peyton Manning on your love list last week.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
Which means and he's on the hate list, so we should start him this week.
If you want, no question. Right? If you want to play both sides, right? I mean, because I got to be honest with you. I'll be honest. Week 1, I had him on my hate list. He was totally awesome. Week 2, I had him on my love list. He was brutal. So either you completely go opposite on me on Peyton Manning, or I'm due. Here's why I think I'm due on Peyton Manning. We saw it on Monday night against the Falcons. The deep ball just isn't there. He hasn't built up the arm strength, and also the timing. That seems to be a little bit off. As much as I like Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, Jacob Tamme, they are not Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark back in the day. The Texans defense, by the way, #1 passing defense, #1 scoring defense. It's a short week for Denver, having to travel back home after the Monday night game at Atlanta. I don't know. I just think there are safer plays than Peyton Manning inside the top 12. I have Manning outside my top 12 this week at quarterback.
All right, now we've got to move on to the love list.
There you go. Now we can bring some love.
Yes, and I like how you own, week 1 and week 2 with Peyton Manning, and maybe you are due.
This just in. I can't tell the future.
But there is a reason why you're the fantasy guru.
There is that, Michelle.
Fantasy
All right.
doctor.
So what do we got?
Moving on to love.
Yes.
Jamal Charles, off to a worrisome start, but why are you keeping the faith here?
It's a total gut call. I understand why people might be like, really, Barry? But the truth of the matter is that he's the best offensive weapon the Chiefs have. And if you've seen the first 2 games for Kansas City, you know they need to do something. It's certainly a good matchup with New Orleans. Saints have given up 5 rushing touchdowns already in the first 2 games. He would have come back in week 2 had the Chiefs been in that game. So if they have any chance of trying to slow down the Saints, they need to run the ball. And the best guy they have to run the ball, Jamal Charles, who practiced fully on Wednesday. You like to see that. You like to see a guy start the week off practicing fully as opposed to like, hey, he was questionable, he was limited. So full speed ahead for Jamal Charles. Again, I know there's not a lot to go on for the first couple of weeks, but I just believe in his talent in this matchup. It's a gut call, but I have Charles as a number 2 running back this week.
All right, a gut call on Charles. Next up, Miles Austin is on the love list. I guess what's not to like here in week 3 against the Bucks?
Yeah, and if we go next level here, Michelle, I know you and I always love to do that in baseball, so here we're going to get to do it in football. If you look at what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do against slot receivers, well, they struggle. Get this stat, Michelle. Okay, against slot receivers, Tampa Bay has given up the most receiving yards to wide receivers lining up out of the slot. And out of the slot, Miles Austin, that's where he lines up a lot with Dallas. He has the 9th most yards among any wide receiver out of the slot in the NFL through 2 games. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we saw that game against the Giants.
Sure.
Eli threw for over 500 yards. So I like in the Cowboys home opener, Tony Romo's favorite target so far this year has been Miles Austin. It's a defense that doesn't match up particularly well with him. I think Miles Austin is a top 10 play this week.
Right. Solid start to the year and even more upside for Miles Austin. And finally here, I like this name. He can still be found on waivers in some leagues. Dennis Pitta.
Yeah, I included him on my love list, not just because I think it's a great matchup with the Patriots. The Patriots defense is pretty solid, but because his production so far this year is real. Getting a lot of questions like, really, can we trust this? I think he can. Dennis Pitta leads the NFL in targets for tight ends. He is tied with Jimmy Graham for most receptions among tight ends. His best friend on the team, who he hangs out with outside of the team, Joe Flacco. That's always a good thing. So Dennis Pitta is a guy that they want to use a lot more in their offense. You're seeing as they open up that Ravens offense. Dennis Pitta is a top 10 tight end, not just this week, but for the rest of the year. And to your point, Michelle, he is still out there in some leagues. So I'd drop Greg Olsen for him. I would drop Fred Davis for him. He is a top 10 guy the rest of the year, completely legitimate.
And BFFs with Flacco, no less.
Nothing like better than that, just like us.
Exactly. Boom goes the dynamite. That was Mr. Matthew Berry, folks. For more insights and analysis from him, check out ESPN.com's fantasy page. I'm Michelle Steele. Thanks for watching Fantasy Focus Football. See you next time.